organized at St. Joseph's University. We began yesterday. We have a bunch of online events happening this week. Today, we are talking to Professor Khyrunnisa, the writer of the popular Butterfingers series from Trivandrum. Welcome to the meeting, Professor Khyrunnisa. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. I made Professor Khyrunnisa acquaintance in circumstances that had nothing to do directly with literature and writing. I'd gone to Trivandrum to explore the possibility of setting up an annual quiz that would occur in May every year called Mahaqvisa. And while I was in Trivandrum, I interacted quite extensively with Professor Vijay Kumar from the Women's College in Trivandrum. He was of great help and also proctored many of the rounds of Mahaqvisa in Trivandrum. And out of that conversation, I got to know his wife, Professor Khyrunnisa, who wrote in very kindly to tell me about how her students at All Saints College enjoyed the quiz. I got to eventually meet her, and I think I was hosted for lunch once at their house, and I ate heartily, probably ate too much if I remember right? Well, so I can testify to the fact that apart from being a great writer, she's also a bit of a whiz in the kitchen and can knuckle up a meal out of nothing in no time, right? So now comes the time when I get to pay back the hospitality a little bit by welcoming you, madam, to Meta. Thank you for kindly agreeing to join us. We are looking forward to this conversation, right? While we wait for Nyx to log in, since he's having some login problems, I'll start the conversation off by asking you one simple question. We all wonder about what writers did to become writers, and one part of that wonder is what did they read and how did that come into the picture when they began writing. So if I may ask you that question, could you please reminisce a little bit about your reading experiences as a child, and did it at all have any kind of impact on or role to play when you actually began writing? Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Arulmani. As you described to them, it's a long association. Not personally meeting was very, very rare, but Arulmani as a name is a big name for us in the quizzing world. And I lived in the quizzing world for a little while. I was not a quizzer, but I was a quiz master, an easier option because you have the answers with you. Yeah. So Arulmani was always a name that we revered and looked up to. And when he invited me to join this session, to come for this session, I was very happy to do that. In fact, it's been a kind of a busy period, but somehow 7th evening was free. And I told him that's the only day I think that could work. And he said, fine, let's do that. So lovely to see you, Arulmani. I'm glad that you have allowed yourself to be visible. I thought I will have to talk to everybody who's invisible and I alone would be visible. Here is another pretty young lady who is visible too. So, yeah. So now coming to your question about reading and writing, the impact reading would have had on my writing. First of all, I would like to tell you that I never really wanted to become a writer. It was never my ambition to become a writer. I wanted to be many things, as everybody is when they are growing up. You know, every day your ambition changes. And among the many ambitions, including becoming a train driver, a road roller driver, which was something that was very fascinating for me. And then finally zeroing in on becoming a teacher, which I finally became. I did not think of becoming a writer, though I always loved English and loved writing. That is the writing period that you have in school was something that I looked forward to, because I thought I should write something different, something new, something humorous. Humor was always very important for me, and that is how I used, and my reading also was more inclined towards humorous books. So growing up, we read a lot. I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of 8 children, and each one, when I'm in the second standard, in fact, I joined school in the second standard. So my husband always tells me that my education is incomplete. If there's any problem with me, he says it's because your education is incomplete. You went straight to the second standard. Anyway, if I'm the second standard, my older sister would be in the fourth, then sixth. Every 2 years, my father was very, he saw to it that every 2 years there was a child. Stopped with me. And therefore, we had of us love to read. There were books in the house, which is very important when you're growing up, to have books in the house. So, like most young children, I started with all these small story books. Then in school, I was in Holy Angels Convent. We have a library period. And every week we have to go to the library, take a book. And it was, of course, Enid Blyton who was the most popular, and I read her a lot. And now, of course, she is not in everybody's good books because of various reasons. But we never thought of all that. We just loved reading her books. They were exciting. There were different kinds of books that she wrote, and I also liked William very much. And I started reading the Classics Illustrated. When we were small, we used to get comics called Classics Illustrated. So we used to read, you might remember, Arun. We used to read those, and anything that you could lay your hands on, we were reading. But it was when I was in class 7 that I got introduced to Jerome K. Jerome, Three Men in a Boat, because I read this. We had to study this excerpt from that book called Uncle Podger Hangs a Picture.
Yes.
Yeah, and that I enjoyed it so much. I went to the source. Where is it from? Three Men in a Boat. I read that. I enjoyed it. Then went to Three Men on the Bummel. And then in class 8, I discovered P.G. Wodehouse. And of course, Agatha Christie, Perry Mason, so many other books. But somehow, P.G. Wodehouse became my favorite. So growing up in a family in a large family, you have to hold your own. There are always verbal duels. You have to outsmart the other person, and you have to be a little clever in the way you respond. So it was almost as if I was being given a training in repartee, in using humor to reply when somebody tells you something, because otherwise your older siblings will sit on your head. So that was what was happening.
I think there's a power cut or something.
Okay, we'll just wait for Professor Khyrunnisa to join us.
Yes. Okay, I think I see Nyx in the meeting also.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Nyx. We're just waiting for ma'am to come back. I think the power went out. We'll wait for a couple of minutes.
Yes, ma'am. I hope I'm visible as well, ma'am.
Yes, kind of. The light is behind you, but it's okay.
I shall try change.
Yeah, I think this is clearer.
Yes,
I think Professor Khyrunnisa is able to join us now. We'll just wait for a confirmation.
Yes, sir. She's back. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It just,
No problem. No
yeah,
problem. No
I
problem.
think you're
We're
all
all
used to
veterans
this.
of the internet failing us. Thank you. It was such a pleasure to have you back, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thank you for answering that question.
Mm.
When I said we'll have ma'am with us talking, I asked around if there were people who'd read her books, if there were fans around. I didn't have to look very far. Nyx, otherwise known as Unikrishnan, turned up and said
Okay.
he read the books and he was, very excited to be in conversation with her. So I'll introduce the two of you. Nyx, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm
Good evening.
Nyx.
It's all yours.
Yeah.
I am a very big. I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yeah, you're audible and visible, and yeah. And I like your name, Nyx, for Unikrishnan. Yeah, you're not audible now.
Not sure if I'm sure I won't remember, ma'am, but you were very crucial part of my childhood. I had met you once when you had come for your book launch for The Misadventures of Butterfingers and Clean Bowl Butterfingers. It was, I think, 5-6 years back.
Yes.
And I had come to one of your book launches and have a signed copy of your book with me, ma'am.
Oh, that's great. So you were in Trivandrum?
No, Bangalore, ma'am.
Oh, when I was in Bangalore, when I came to Bangalore, all right. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, and reading Butterfingers has been such a defining part of my reading habit as a child. That was my transition from reading novels to a transition from reading comics to novels was because of Butterfingers. So I'm really excited to be on the panel here. When Arun sir and Vijeta ma'am had let me know about this, I was extremely excited.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to hear this.
So before we start off the discussion, I have always had one small question in my head. It's like a question that I have decided I ask every favorite author of mine if I ever come across them. And that is, what kind of literature did you read as a child when you were growing up?
Yeah, that's just what Arulmani, I think he must have sensed that's going to be your first question. He asked me that because you were not able to log in. And I was just telling him that when I was growing up, I love to read. I always loved books because I came from a house which was full of readers, and we had books borrowed from libraries or from friends, and so I read all kinds of books. But my weakness was for humorous books. I also, and that is why I chose. It was P.G. Woodhouse whom I really loved, and I read almost all his books. He's written about 100 books, and I actually own must be about 65 books of his I own, and even now I read them often. There is one book of Woodhouse on my breakfast table, on my dining table, and I must tell you that I hide these books. I'm so possessive of these books. You know how people borrow a book. When it comes to books, people don't think of returning books. They borrow and then the book disappears from your house and from your life. And therefore, I actually hide these books. I won't tell you where I hide them, but they are pretty well hidden. So these were the books, but I read all kinds of books. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, so as a reader in your childhood and also now being an author yourself, do you have an idea, or do you have anything that you have to say to us about why we keep returning to these books that we read as children? For instance, right, like you said, you still go back to P.G. Woodhouse's books. So as an author, what do you think? Why do you think people go back to reading stuff that they liked as a child?
See, I wouldn't go back to everything I read as a child. Like, I wouldn't really go back to Enid Blyton's or any of those. P.G. Woodhouse isn't exactly writing for children. It is just that I discovered him when I was a child. So that way, there is so much in his writing. And in fact, as literature students, you will love the way he has written, because you have so many quotations there. If you don't know literature, you will just gloss over them. You would not know where they are from. But he actually packs, he uses this dexterity with the language, and the way he manipulates language, the way he uses language. I don't think anyone can really use language the way he does. Maybe Shakespeare can, but Woodhouse is a class apart. And that is why I go back to him, Nyx, not because, that you want to go back to the books that you read when you were growing up. They have a lot of influence on you. See, when I'm writing for children, those books that I read do come back to my mind, but I don't really go and read them. I may read other children's books, contemporary writers' books, just to know what is happening in the children's book world, just to know where we have reached, how different is writing now from what it was then. It was more that and an interest in them. But with Woodhouse alone, it is because I think he's for all time. He's for all ages. You can't nail him like that. So that's my only question. But of course, if you have a particular favorite, maybe you will go back to it, because Pride and Prejudice I read when I was in the 8th or 9th, and that's also a book that I occasionally go back to, because again you have Jane Austen with a subtle. Her humor is also very, you know how it is, a little sarcastic, very ironic, and it's not in your face humor. It's wonderful. You go back to those kind of books. Yeah. Have I answered your question as you would have liked me to answer?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, when you're looking in and exploring into writing itself.
Exploring into?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you did. Yeah, certainly did, ma'am.
I think there's a small lag with.
I think there is a small lag. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So exploring into your writing, right? You said how you still look good. Is it better now, ma'am?
Yeah. Now, when you asked, is it better? It's better. I didn't hear what you said before that. Can you repeat what you said?
Am I? Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. All right, ma'am. So now it's fine, right, ma'am?
Yeah, now it's fine.
Yes, ma'am. So what I was asking is, when we are exploring into writing so you as an author now, you said you look into other, contemporary writers as we see what children are reading today. So one common trait that I've noticed between your novels is that it all has to do with playgrounds, right? Like sports and the playground. So why is it that you keep going back to the playground in your novels now?
I don't know. Now that you tell me, maybe it does have a role to play. The thing is, maybe subconsciously, I love sports and I want children to play. That's, if you notice, my first novel, House at Butterfinger, is a cricket-based book. The second one, Goal, is a football-based book. The third, Clean Bold, is again a cricket-based book. Then the fourth, fifth, sixth, these books are collections of short stories, but the first story is a long story, a novella. And there, the first one is actually, it was on the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. So I got these children to put up a play. It goes, and it's a nice mishmash of a lot of things. But the next one, which is Run Its Butterfingers, again, the novella is about karate. So you have another kind of sport coming in. And of course, it's Butterfingers also starts with a girls versus boys cricket match. And I'm trying to draw girls in. Somehow I started with a boys' school, and I'm desperately trying to get some female presence, because a lot of my readers are also girls and they have no complaints. I'm the one feeling guilty. And I'm trying to bring more girls in. And then the latest book, that is this one, Smash It Butterfingers. This is a badminton-based novel. So that is how, and I don't know, I feel children are not playing enough. I think the two things I would love children to do is to read books and play games, actual games. You find children saying, yeah, we played football, and they're actually playing video games, football on the screen. That's not what we want. We want them to get out there and play. So that is probably why I'm bringing the playground back. Like other people have write fantasy fiction, mine are realistic books. There is no horror, what to say, no witches, no wizards, nothing of that sort. If you're looking for that, you'll have to look elsewhere. But these are real life problems. School, very often, I loved school stories growing up. See, one of the questions you could ask is, how has my reading when I was young, how did it influence my writing? This could be one thing. I loved reading humorous books, and I write humorous books. I loved reading school stories, school-based stories. Anthony Buckeridge's Jennings, wonderful books. I don't think people have even heard of those books now, but if you can, please try and read. You will just love them. And those are also school stories, and how the kind of scrapes children get into. So I enjoyed those, and therefore, when I was writing, somehow it's not that I want to duplicate it, but I feel comfortable in that environment. I want children to also feel happy with books that take them to school. They are all anyway in school, but where they can relate to what's happening and relate to the characters, relate to the problems. And that's probably why I do this. But it has not been conscious, Nyx. I'm glad that you asked me this. I didn't realize that I was bringing the playground so often. I knew I was writing sports-based stories, but bringing the playground in, I did not think of it that way. In fact, the house at Butterfingers is about how the children are upset because they're going to lose the school playground. Yeah.
Ma'am, so you spoke about the first novella, right, ma'am? The Shakespeare one. So yeah, that is my by far favorite work of yours, ma'am.
Oh, really? I'm so
yes,
glad, Nikrishan, because I always think I let myself go writing that story. It's not really for children. It will be an older person who will enjoy that story better. Because I brought Shakespeare in there is one boy I created whose name is Kishore, with high reading skills, who even the English teacher is a little scared of him because he can correct her. I deliberately created this character so that I could channelize my love for literature through him. So when these boys think of putting up a play, a Shakespeare, to honor Shakespeare, they want to put up a play which is a mishmash of Shakespeare's plays. How many children who are in the 8th class will really do it? So having a boy like Kishore helped. Nobody will ask questions. Nobody will point out. So they'll say, all right, Kishore, you think of it. And therefore they come up with a play. And then there is this boy who loves Sherlock Holmes. So he says, bring Sherlock in. You have to bring Sherlock Holmes into this play. So finally, this is the play they write. The play is the thing. The case of Hambeth, Prince of Venice. So you have Macbeth, Hamlet, Merchant of Venice, and the case of makes it Sherlock Holmes. So that is how they have this play. And I brought in a lot of other things which US literature students will understand better. I'm so happy you liked it. I've been waiting for someone to say they love Misadventures of Butterfingers and that Ghosts at Green Park.
Yes. It was my favorite story by far, because, for instance, like you said, the mix of so much literature, even as an 8th standard student, for me, that was very enjoyable because Shakespeare was very complex language to consume. So to know the story through a language that I'm more comfortable with, and also to look at it as a play when I'm like reading it, they're performing a play. That also directed me towards my love for theater as well. So that's
Isn't
why
it a particularly absurd play? Didn't you find it very absurd?
It was absurd, man. But at the same time, they were having so much fun in that.
Yeah.
And and that's one more common thing that I've seen across all the books, because it's so much fun that it feels like you're also with the characters, having partaking in that fun. Ma'am, so my next question to you is to do with you. So since you brought up the school, you are a professor and you write stories about the school life and students, what they do in their classroom environment. So how has being an author for children's book impacted your life as a teacher?
I think you could put it the other way around. How has my life as a teacher impacted my writing for children? Because as I told you, I did not, I started writing rather late, quite by accident. It just so happened that I sent an entry for a competition, which got a prize, and somehow that stoked interest in writing. And that was pretty late because I was totally interested in teaching. But when I started writing, and somehow because I started by writing for children, I kind of got stuck in children's fiction. So people ask me, did you always want to write for children? I said it wasn't like that, because when you're consciously trying to make a career of writing, then you make conscious choices. In my case, it was quite by accident, because my little son was there at home. We used to get tinkle. There was this competition where they were asking for entries. I sent an entry, and that got a prize, which would have, and the story would have stopped there, but something else happened. And then there you are, one after the other, things happen. And that's how I started writing for children. But being in college, and before I was in college, I worked for 1.5 years in a school in Holy Angels Convent, ICSE. I was teaching the 10th and the 9th English. And they actually made me believe. They were wonderful students. All of them were good students. They were not the goody two-shoes type. They were good in academics, but they were also mischievous. At the same time, they were well-behaved. It's a nice mix of everything. And they made me believe that all children will be like this. You go and teach anywhere, you will end up with students like this. Let me tell you, I have never found those kind of students ever. Never have I found a full class with all these students. You find a few, and you're used to that. But this particular batch, where all 40 students were good, it's an utopian class, you could say. You can't get that kind of class. And then I went, so that experience was there, teaching them. Then I come from a large family. There are lots of children around, so you're observing them. Then you're teaching in a college where also the children are overgrown. I mean, the students are overgrown children, 16, 17, 18, 19. Not much to choose between them, and 14, 13, 14. I mean, there is something, but basically you can get a lot of ideas by observing them. I was not consciously doing it, that I must tell you, but I like to observe people in general. So when you start writing, all this unconsciously has a role to play in the kind of characters you create, in the kind of incidents you create. And then teaching in a college where you're also teaching the theory of writing, of what prose fiction is all about, what short stories are all about, and you're reading different kinds of stories. All this, you could say, went into this stock pot, you could say, and helped me in my second career as a writer.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. That was a very nice journey to show how these people have impacted your writing. So that's to look at what this author that you've been reading has been thinking when they're writing is something that's very nice to know. Feel like I have like a secret that I can keep to myself.
Thank you, Nyx.
So one last question before we go to the audience is that I've always been curious about the setting of the stories. So I can say that it's on a playground. I can see that it's in a school. I can to some extent see that it's in some house, but I don't really know which part of the country, where what cultural elements are outside of that school, or what is outside of that house when I read these books. So that's something I've always been curious about. What's outside that school?
Well, Unikrishnan, Nyx side, I also don't know. I deliberately did not give the town a name. I gave the name of Green Park Higher Secondary School to the school. And there also is my love for cricket, I think. I did not even, there is this Green Park Stadium in Kanpur, right? So I gave the name Green Park Higher Secondary School without even thinking about it. I didn't think of this at all, but that's the name I gave. But not giving a name to the town where these children live is a conscious decision, deliberate decision, because I thought if I call it Mumbai, because there are some people who say there's a Marathi flavor in what I write. There's something of Bombay. They feel that it could be Mumbai. I said, I really don't know, because I did stay in Nagpur for some time and I really loved Nagpur. Whether that could have influenced, but then I stayed most of my life in Kerala, so that also would be there. And so what I decided to do was that if I leave it like this, any child from any part of India would be able to relate to the story. Otherwise, it becomes kind of area specific. I didn't want to do that. And that is also why I don't bring in any local language or any typical Indianisms in what I write. And there are some people who say this is not exactly, our children also mix the local language when they talk. I said they might do that, but maybe, okay, then what I'm writing could be an idealized version of a language. And that's all right, because I don't make it stilted. It is still what an English speaking, where the medium of instruction is English, where the children speak in English. Like the school I grew up in, we were punished if you speak in any other language. And such schools, they speak more or less like this. Of course, they might use a lot more swear words. Someone told me, there is no bad language in your book. You don't know the kind of language 8th standard students speak. I said, let them speak. But in my books, I don't want to use that language. No, it doesn't mean I have to it should be, I should duplicate everything that children actually do, because you know how it is. When you write, you don't write everything that actually happens. It'll be so boring then. You're just choosing and writing what is necessary for your plot.
Yes, ma'am. This
Shall
was
I
a wonderful.
ask you a question, Unnikrishnan? Since you're
Yes,
asking me all these questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's a good thing I did, or do you think I should have given a name?
Ma'am, the fact that I'm able to ask you this question, right, ma'am?
Yeah.
Says that it's a good thing, because that lets every single reader who has read this book wonder about that question. So every time you're buying a new book that you write, we are hoping that the question will be answered in that.
That some hint will emerge, where you can say that this is the place she means. This is the city she's talking about. All right. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And also the same time, it lets us focus on that school. Instead of going and seeing what's outside, not knowing what's outside keeps the center of the focus on the school itself. So yes, I think it was a really good thing that you did not.
Yeah, because you know what, I don't want to say that I did a wonderful thing or anything like that, but I do find I've gone to schools all over India. So everywhere I have found children coming and telling me, how do you know how we speak? This is how we are able to relate so well. So that makes me happy, because if I had put it in a school in Trivandrum, or if it's a school in Delhi, a child in Trivandrum, however they can relate, may not relate quite the way they are relating to it now. Yes, so I don't know. Maybe it is okay to do what I did.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
It was wonderful being able to talk to you right now, because I did speak to you the day that you signed my book. Also, I had like a question for you, and I think you had told me that you had written the book keeping your son in mind as a protagonist. When I had a conversation with you that day.
Not exactly as a protagonist. I used his name.
Yes, name. Yes,
yeah. His name, but not his character. My son is more a quiet boy. Amar is a sodium in water, the Butterfingers, the hero of my books. Yeah. And all the names of my son's friends, they're all engineers now, big people. I mean, big, very, people ask me, how is your son? And then I'll say, put your hand right up, he's 6 feet tall. Yeah. And their names are the names that I've given for Butterfingers' friends.
Yes,
and they're so pleased about it, but not their character, because I don't want to be hopping in and out of courtrooms.
Yes, ma'am. So it was really nice to have a second conversation with you again, and hopefully next time I have this conversation with you, you'll be live here at Meta. It'll be wonderful to have you there. So
thank you.
before I hand look for questions from the viewers, I'd like to make a small announcement regarding Meta's schedule tomorrow. 8th February 2023, which is a Wednesday, at 4:30 p.m. we have Else Respect Self-Respect, which is a workshop on building a life of mind by our own very Professor Vijeta Kumar from the Department of English. And at 8 p.m., we have a conversation with Zenisha Gonzalez on Zoom. And the link can be accessed on Meta Joseph's Instagram. Please do follow our Instagram page and look for live updates. Now we go on to the viewers and we'd like to ask them if they have any questions.
Before, immediately after that ad break, Professor Khyrunnisa, I'd like to ask if there's anything you'd want to read to our audience.
Well, there's quite something I could read, but these are all the books that I told you about, all the Butterfingers books. But other than the Butterfingers books, I have written several other books, which is one is The Lizard of Oz and Other Stories, which is animal stories, a personal favorite. And The Crocodile Who Ate Butter Chicken for Breakfast and Other Stories, again animal stories. And then there is this novella, Baby and Dub Dub, which has an animal, a child and a baby, and the dynamics of their relationship. And then I ventured into writing for adults. So 2 books of mine have come, which are for adults. Adults meaning, they're not adult in that way. Like a friend, when he knew that I was right, I come out with my first book for adults. He asked me, "You've written a book for adults? What are those pages?" I said, "What pages?" You're not going to get those. There's nothing like that. So this is for older people. And Tongue in Cheek, The Funny Side of Life is a humorous book about the misadventures of an urban woman. And then my latest book that's come out, which is Chuckle Mary Spin, Us in the US, which is recording our first trip to the US. My husband and I hadn't been abroad at all, no passport. And my husband's stock excuse was, "We don't have passports and I have asthma, so we are not going out." And then my son got married. My daughter-in-law invited us to Syracuse for her graduation. And you can't say no bluntly to a daughter-in-law. So he said, "Let me see." Now, "let me see" was actually going to be a lead up to "no, I may not." But we just held him to this "let me see." You said "let me see," which means yes, so. And we plotted and we went. And we had a wonderful time. We had a lot of adventures. So it's a fun travelogue, humorous travelogue. So here, maybe, we have this, the kind of everything was a revelation in the US, including the kind of food, the sandwiches. So I'll just read a little bit about hunting for food there. So we were in Wisconsin, all right? So we got off at the University of Madison, bidding a warm goodbye to Steve. Steve was the driver of the bus. From there, we went food hunting. Arpita is my daughter-in-law. She took us to a nearby fast food outlet for sandwiches. Now, if you think buying a sandwich is the easiest task on earth, you have another thing coming. For in the US, it is not a simple choice, but a multi-layered decision-making process that challenges the highest intelligence. "You have to choose, Auntie," said Arpita, going ahead. She's been calling us auntie and uncle, all right? And we preferred that because mother-in-law, father-in-law is a little frightening. Anyway, I looked at the menu stuck on the wall and chose. So very cleverly, she moved away, leaving me to my own defenses. And I said, "I want a meat sandwich." And that started the elaborate gastronomical inquisition. "That's perfect." The woman behind the counter gave a plastic smile. "What kind of bread? Regular, brown, wheat, multigrain, toasted or plain?" "Plain grain," I stammered, giving the 2 words I could recall, as nervous as I had been when I faced the PG Viva board. "What kind of cheese do you prefer? Soft, hard, semi-hard, blue, processed? And the filling, what vegetables? Lettuce, tomato, onion, cucumber?" I felt dizzy. "What meat? Some eggs too? And sauce, ma'am? Tomato ketchup, chili, mayonnaise, white, blonde?" By then I had a headache. "An aspirin, that's what I want," I wished to tell her. "And pink bread with green cheese, cauliflower filling, kangaroo meat, and auburn sauce. Let me see you get me that." So I don't even remember what I finally got. Just a little bit from this book. There are lots of other passages, but I think we will be running short of time, and so that's. I hope you will read the book and enjoy it.
Superb. Thank you very much.
If anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. We will unmute.
What about Yasmin? She was also supposed to be asking me questions. I thought she's.
Yeah, I think there might have been a slight change in plans.
Okay.
Last minute, that's why. Yes, you're
Any
welcome to raise your
questions?
hand. Yeah, whoever has questions, you can raise your hand or put them in the chat.
No questions? This seems a lot like my students.
We've also had similar experiences. For about 30 seconds or so, I think.
Yeah, no, it's always the first question. Once
Yeah.
somebody asks, then the others ask. It's always like that.
Good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And in my class, when I take class, I always tell my students, I'll ask a lot of questions and I answer all of them myself.
Okay. That's usually what happens.
So any questions? There are lots of interesting names here. Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Somebody has said, I belong to that batch of holy angels. Oh,
It's a reunion.
proud to be a student. Thank you. How lovely. That is something lovely, wonderful.
I'll copy this message and send it to you, ma'am.
Yeah, please. These are the things that really make you very happy, something from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You
I
have a
question. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I was wondering, so you mentioned that this was a travelogue, right? So I was wondering what that journey was like as a writer to go from looking at fiction and looking at the space of the playground and then moving to this travelogue. I was just wondering that fiction, non-fiction, like if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Because it's a totally different thing. See, I have now dabbled with different genres. I have written short stories, I have written novella, I have written novels, I have written essays. See, this is in effect a collection of essays, because this is actually a humor column that I had in the Hindu, which became very popular. And readers used to tell me, and these faithful students who would come and tell me, ma'am, we cut all that and keep, and we are scared that we lose them. Why don't you put them into compile them into a book? So that's what gave me the idea, and it became a huge success. So that this is, you could call it essays, right? As a teacher, we can call these essays. And then this happened. So when we went to the US, I wasn't really thinking of writing a travelogue, but I have this habit of just making notes. I have a diary, which is one of the most boring diaries in the world. Something like 1 packet of milk today, gas got over, and that kind of thing. But I also write what happened on that day. That something, if I have an event, that kind of thing. So when I went to the US, I didn't want to take this fact diary with me. I took a slim notebook.
Okay.
And I thought I will insert it there. And every day I will just jot down where we went, what we did. That's all. Very brief. So that was what I was doing. Every day I used to do that, but very brief notes, because just for my sake, not for anything else. But when we were in San Jose, the friend that we were staying with, he saw me do this. And he asked me, are you planning to write a book, a travelogue about your adventures and your travel? That actually gave me the idea. I thought, why not? Because looking back, I realized we went there for 40 days. And we had a lot of incidents happening to us. It was pretty eventful. And we went, in those 40 days, we went to 6 states. And we had friends there who said, oh, we have been here so many years, we haven't gone to more than 2 states.
Yeah.
And you have gone to 6 states. We saw a tornado. We got caught in, we had quite a few adventures. Yeah. So when these things are happening, these incidents were crying to be recorded. So I thought I should do that. And believe me, from the day he asked me, are you planning to write a book? My notes became more elaborate. I started noting down every little detail. And when I came back, I asked my editor, the publisher of this book, Kartika, and I said, I have this idea vaguely in my head. She said, it's a brilliant idea. Let's see how it will work out. And then I started writing, but no, it's not a joke, writing a travelogue, because I had to put in so much hard work. I think this maximum, I have invested a lot of time, energy, and hard work into this book. To write one line, I shouldn't go wrong in facts. I may have gone to places and seen them, but when you're writing about them, you can't just write them. You have to put it in an interesting way. You have to put it, also bring in humor. At the same time, don't distort facts. So you have to do research on that. And I took a long time, doing that. But thankfully, I traveled with my husband and my daughter-in-law and my son. My son wasn't there all the time. My daughter-in-law, either of them would be with us. So I could always go back to them and ask, isn't this what that happened? Didn't we go to this place after this? Because I didn't want to write a boring travelogue. I wanted to write a travelogue that would be a fun travelogue where we are taking people with us, where they are enjoying it with us, and where they have the kind of suspenseful adventures that we had and come out of it unscathed. I hope I have been successful in that, because the feedback I have got has been something to this effect, so I'm happy about that, because I have put so much into it that I would, I would want it to come out the way I imagined it should be.
I'm looking forward to reading it, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, please, and let me know how you like it, because I would like a frank opinion on how you like it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so no other questions?
Don't think so at the moment.
No. Shweta, Trinanjana, Rajul. These are the names that are there.
Yeah, I think everyone's being quiet today.
I hope they're not sleeping.
No, please, not at all.
We have that effect, right? We teachers, we know how to do this.
But everyone's here at 7 p.m. of their own choice. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And of their own choice, they can sleep too. Yeah. So Arul, do you have any questions?
I was going to ask you which of your contemporaries writing for children in India you'd like to recommend to someone who's, hoping to make a start by reading from the beginning.
There are a lot of Indian writers, writing children's fiction now. There is this lady called Vaishali Shroff who writes about these dinosaurs. Then there's Asha Nehemiah. When you ask about Indian writers, people only come up with two names. It's either Askin Bond or Sudha Murthy. But there are a lot of other good writers. You have Anushka Ravishankar. You have Paro Anand. Paro Anand writes pretty serious books. So they are all books that you can enjoy. Different types of books. They are serious. Some of them are meaningful. Then there's Vinita Coelho who writes. Then Rupa Pai who writes non-fiction, which also is expressed in a very reader-friendly way. At the same time, not just for very small children. Writing for very small children is an art which I don't know. It's a different thing altogether to capture the attention of little children. I really admire those people. I don't know exactly who are the ones at that level, who write so well. It's more my age group, 10 plus, or higher reading skills, maybe 9 plus. That's my target reader. So they could start with any of these writers. Yeah,
that's quite a good list, ma'am.
Because what happens, is that when you ask, when you go to a bookstore also, what you find is you will find Harry Potter, Rick Riordan, Wimpy Kid, what is that other one? Geronimo Stilton. These are the books that are there. Sometimes Terry Pratchett, but you don't find, and they are the ones hogging the show. Indian writers will be behind. So what happens? The parents buy this, then peers also, the children tell this to their friends, and then they buy. So you have to see that Indian writers also get their due. That has to be consciously done. When we grew up, we didn't read Indian writers at all. We always read only foreign writers. But now we have a lot of good Indian writers. It's a very exciting market.
Yeah, when I was in Trivandrum, I made a completely happy discovery once. I looked out of a bus and I was passing by that location, the convention location near the museum and the zoo. And I thought I saw Adur's face in a public meeting. So I got out of the bus and went in and found that I was attending the inauguration of a children's book festival.
Book festival.
Book
Oh,
fair,
great.
organized by the Kerala State Council for Children's Literature. So that's how I discovered this wonderful body, right, which apparently brings out as many as 100 new titles every year.
That will be only mostly Malayalam.
Yeah, only in Malayalam.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And for the longest time, there's been the Children's Book Trust in India. When I was a kid, I remember coming across things that they were publishing. But I don't know if the government has done enough to promote.
That is, I think,
quality.
Shankar who was responsible for this Children's Book Trust. Yeah. But that is a good. Even now they are there, but I don't know how well they are doing.
How much
I
funding?
have a few. I have a few stories that they have brought out in anthologies. CBT has made a mark. I think mostly you find those books being given as prizes at competitions.
They're quite cheap, so I guess they'll fit into every organizer's budget.
That's right.
So what do you think of this idea that governments could do more for children's publishing? Because I think all of us come from the age when, even though we didn't have much children's publishing, the Soviet Union sort of took care of
the
our
very
childhood.
cheap books, right?
Yeah.
In fact, yesterday we were talking about those books. Nice stories, and we used to get those big stories, books. Very cheap. They were doing that. Correct.
The Russian fairy tales and all this.
Right.
So do you think the state can do a little more in terms of supporting children's publishing?
Definitely they should do that. There is a kind of a stepmotherly attitude towards children's writing, which you must have realized. It's always you will find people saying children must read books, children must be exposed to reading fast, early, you should catch them young. All that is there. But when it comes to placing children's books, it is always rung below books for adults. And even there, I think humor is a little below the other, what they call meaningful books, which dish out morals and those kind of heavy books, which deal with issues. There are lots of children's books which deal with issues, the present, including gender problems and all those things. So it's very diverse, the field. But so that's why I feel, people should should give children's writing its due, and not regard it as something that is necessary but need not be given too much importance. And they probably, I really think they should do something more for children's literature, because it is so important. You find that is what helps you when you're growing up. Unconsciously, it molds your character. You learn so much growing up reading children's literature. Whatever we become, I think, is because of the books we read when we are very young. We don't, as I was telling earlier, it's unconsciously happening. We are not conscious of it, but it is actually changing us, shaping us. So I seriously believe that they should give a lot of importance to children's writing, and of course, sift through it. Don't just throw anything at children. You have to. I also say that children should find their own books. Allow them to browse and choose their books, but at the same time, you should also, in a sense, without pushing good books down their throat, diplomatically lead them to some better books and things like that. I always tell people you must also read bad books, because only then you will know what is good and what is bad. You can't always read only good books, but don't get stuck in bad books. That's because your critical acumen also has to grow.
Sure. Thank you for those responses, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
think
hope you all will also give importance to children's writing. In fact, something that people have always asked me is, you're writing for children. When are you going to write for adults? Almost as if, I'm learning my trade
a
writing for
promotion.
children. I tell them, look, it's not that. There are two different ways of writing approach. And so now I'm writing for children. And so now you're finally writing for adults also. No, as if now I have made it kind of. They don't understand. What do you do?
True, true. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you for this very wonderful and warm conversation. Like Nyx was saying, I hope we can get you over to Meta next year in person. And perhaps you could also do a little workshop with us on writing for children. I'll try and see if we can set this up next year. Right. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be part of Mita and happy to meet all these invisible faces and three visible faces. Thank you very much, Professor Arul. Thank you very much. Your name is?
Drishti, ma'am.
Drishti. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's lovely meeting you. And Unikrishnan, you're still there, I hope?
Yes, ma'am. I'm right.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for asking all those questions, and all you lovely people who joined in. Thank you very much. And my people always ask me, what is your last message? I said, I hate giving messages, but if you want something at the end, it is keep reading. That's all that I have to say. Yeah, be good readers. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. As everyone's leaving, I just want to mention we have the next contest starting right now. I've left a invite on the meeting chat if anyone would like to join. Thank you. The TRH Peck Memorial Lecture Contest. Thank you.